Now, if you're a fan of the TV shows 30 Rock or Sex and the City, you might be familiar with Tasti D-Lite, the purveyor of the soft-serve, dairy-based frozen dessert that's lower in calories, fat, carbs and sugar than traditional ice cream. The company operates franchises in the US, Mexico, Australia and the Middle East. And our next guest says franchise owners are the real heroes of the economy. Joining us is Jim Amos, President and CEO of Tasti D-Lite. His new book, The Tasti D-Lite Way, Social Media Marketing Lessons for Building Loyalty and a Brand Customers Crave, comes out next month. Jim, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Patrick O'Keefe is still with us as well. I should say this. Why are franchises the heroes of the American economy?
Well, I think that franchises as small business purveyors, like all small business owners, are really the real heroes of our economy and frankly offer the solution to our economic ills here and around the world, in my opinion. Every net job in America since 1984, as an example, has been generated through small business, and in particular with business format franchises. We employ, both directly and indirectly, about 20 million people and generate $2.3 trillion in our economy, which is roughly, 8–9% of the private economy. So very substantial, larger than any other two economic sectors combined.
You've got 60 stores today. You want to build out 500 stores globally. I mean, that's a pretty ambitious scheme here. If you want to roll out this franchise more in America right now, which are the areas of the country where you're going to get more traction and is doing better and people are more willing to take this on?
Well, we've been expanding, as you mentioned earlier, around the world, which has been reflecting, frankly, robust growth domestically across the country. The reality is, if you look at our economy since 2009, which was perhaps the year of maximum uncertainty, each year since then has had its own challenges, beginning with some optimism, and generally the middle of the year, for one reason or another, cratering in some sense. So consumer confidence is down. On September 7th, as an example, in New York, it's Tasti D-Lite Day for our 25th anniversary. And to assist with consumer confidence, we're going to offer 25-cent cones all day. But I think in terms of geographical targets, in the last 4 years, even though access to loans for organic growth has been quite difficult, in fact, 50% of all financeable transactions have not occurred, we've been able to put just about the 500 units that you're talking about in the queue, not open, but in the queue through working with area developers, multiple store developers, people who had infrastructure and operational expertise and experience in place.
Jim, this is Pat O'Keefe. Since ice cream is at the top of the food pyramid, you've got a compelling product. But we right now know that we have an extraordinary amount of uncertainty in the economy, both the household sector and the business sector. How is that affecting the implementation of your business plan?
Well, I go back to the earlier question about small business owners, franchisees being the heroes of the economy. These are people that understand what it means to have to make a payroll. These are people that are impacted significantly by upward trends or downward trends in comps and same-store sales. These are people that often have their life savings on the line. So when you talk about questions as it relates to health care or energy or taxes, or particularly regulatory environments that, in a sense, depress expansion, the employer mandate related to Obamacare, that's significant on these businesses. For the last 4 years, we saw, both in Tasti D-Lite and Planet Smoothie, which we acquired at the end of 2011, really downward trends in comps until the beginning of 2012. For the first 6 months in 2012, we actually saw double-digit same-store sales on the Planet Smoothie side and roughly 5–6% improvement on the Tasti side. But again, at the beginning of the year, beginning in June, that began to be depressed again. And of course, we're bumping up against this election, and I think that's becoming a significant mandate overall for this year.
Jim, I'm wondering, because of what's happened with employment, whether you've seen more people expressing an interest in franchise. It might have been people who've worked for companies, find themselves out of a job and think, well, maybe I can do something on my own, whether more people have expressed an interest, but then have come up with this problem of actually getting the funding, which you seem to point to earlier. What's happening in terms of interest and access to getting funds?
You know, again, a great question. Everyone talks about the availability of funds. We've participated in a couple of small business summits and lending summits with the associations related with the full spectrum of the banking community. And what you hear being said by the talking heads is that everybody's awash in cash, the funds are available, and then you sit down and talk to franchisors and franchisees who tell you that, and while the banks are saying there's no demand, the reality is the demand is there, but the loans are not being proffered, and they still aren't today. There may be some encouragement in that direction, but believe me, not much. So you know, the reality is businesses like ours who have a requirement to expand and a moral and ethical commitment, I think, to the franchise community and to the business and to the brand, you go out and look at every way possible you can to continue to scale to help these folks until there's really funds available for them. I have to tell you, I don't see that occurring in the near distant future, and it has been a continual suppression on development and scaling, particularly in the franchising world. Now, you know, I mean, there's a lot of talk recently about comments that have been made, such as, you know, you didn't build that, which can be, if interpreted a particular way, offensive to small business folks. But here's the reality. They did build it as small business folks. But if some of these businesses are being impaired and in some case lost today, they're not doing that by themselves. They're doing that because of specifically government programs that are not allowing them to continue to grow, that are suppressing the entrepreneurial spirit in the marketplace, and specifically, as you're pointing out, not allowing real loans to be made to real people in a real-time basis.
So we still have to sort out. Jim, thanks for joining us. 25-year anniversary. Just very, very briefly, over that period, what's been the best-selling flavour?
Well, you know, we looked at the data over 25 years. And I think some combination of peanut butter is always high on the list. But certainly across the spectrum in the world of frozen desserts, vanilla and chocolate always lead by significant margins.
You can't beat the old favourites.
Encourage everybody to come and see us on the 7th in New York, please.
All right. I'd like to come over to New York. Jim, thanks for that. Jim Amos, President and CEO of Tasti D-Lite. Thanks for joining us this morning.